Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Caroline Raffi. I'm a VP of Enterprise with Ducere Global Business School. I'm very excited and honored to have Lisa Beyer with us and also Corey Welsh with us. Today, we're talking about maximizing the power of LinkedIn. I'm just going to jump into it. I want to take a moment to thank our panelists and presenters and to introduce them. But before doing that, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Ducere Global Business School. Ducere provides access to the most affordable quality education, and it provides the most industry-relevant MBA, MBAs in business. Professionals without bachelor degrees can qualify for the MBA programs by leveraging their management experience. Programs are 100% online, and they can be completed in only 12 months. Female Disruptors, again, thank you. Sponsoring us. Female Disruptors is a passion project by Lisa Beyer. Its mission is to spotlight women who are disruptors in their space. They believe that you don't need a best-selling book to be a female disruptor. You need passion, vision, focus, compassion, determination, and a burning desire to share this with the world. Thank you, Lisa. I'd like to welcome Corey Welsh, Senior Enablement Lead. As a connector at heart, Corey loves to inspire those around her to maximize their potential by fostering community, learning, and growth. As a global sales enablement lead at LinkedIn and frequent event speaker, her aim is to help LinkedIn members and LinkedIn talent advisors excuse me, to leverage the platform for maximum connection and fulfillment. After consulting HR professionals on how to maximize LinkedIn for their business, Corey switched to coaching sales managers and other consultants internally. Meanwhile, she became a casual career coach, helping others grow in their current role, move abroad, or make a pivot. Corey is also an advocate for gender equality. Love it, Corey. And women leaders in the workplace. And she's an active leader of the Women at LinkedIn and USC Trojan Women's Network. Amazing. Lisa Beyer. Meet Lisa Beyer, the founder of Female Disruptors, a renowned public relations expert, author, and podcast host. Lisa's specialty is optimizing PR strategies by incorporating search, social media, and Web3 innovations. With over a decade of experience as a speaker, Lisa has been educating brands and marketers on the secrets of achieving publicity and exposure through social media, SEO, and new techs like AI and the metaverse. She has authored several books, including Digital Detox Secrets and the 4th edition of Social PR Secrets. In her spare time, Lisa is a certified yoga instructor. Wow, Lisa. And digital enthusiast who can be found in her Florida-based or watching sunset at Buyers Group pop-up office in Anna Maria Island. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to let you take over.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for the kind introductions. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much to those of you who have joined. I see that we have almost over 20 participants, so feel free to join in the chat and let us know what questions you have throughout today, because Lisa and I really want to make this a discussion. So just to make sure that everyone's listening, I love to invite you to type into the chat, like, what's one word for how you're feeling today when it comes to LinkedIn? Are you feeling confident? Are you feeling nervous? Are you feeling excited to learn more? That's one word, hyphenated. And I think what Lisa and I would like to cover today can best be summarized threefold. We want to talk to you about the 3 ways to maximize the power of LinkedIn by answering why. Why are you on the network? Why do you think this platform can help you? Or why do you want to help others using the platform? The second question is who? Who are you here to uniquely help or connect with and learn from? Because once you know your why, it'll be a lot easier to target who. And then our third question that we will answer and ponder together is, what unique gifts do you bring today? Could you contribute them to LinkedIn using the power of long-form articles? What unique brilliance do you also want to grow and keep learning after you complete your degree at Ducere? This series of questions is going to help you achieve a more complete profile, but also a more colorful and powerful voice that will help your LinkedIn stand out from the rest. And Lisa and I will pause throughout the topics to ask like questions of you. Lisa, feel free to ask me questions as we go along, and we welcome you all to participate in the chat. So just to make sure that webinar chat is working, I want everyone to go ahead and again, give me one word to describe how they're feeling. Make sure your chat is set to message everyone, as the default may be saying message the hosts and the panelists only. All right, sounds like everyone's still drinking their last cup of coffee. They're thinking about what to write because it's a silent group. But Lisa, I love that you're feeling mindful today. So let's be mindful with our time and let's jump right in. So first and foremost, like I mentioned, the first question that will dictate all the rest is, why are you on LinkedIn? Once you know your why, this will help you to elevate your profile by telling your personal story. So LinkedIn is a place where you can stand out above your CV or your resume. LinkedIn is not meant to be a carbon copy of your resume. So here are 5 tips for how to do that at the bare minimum. And then we'll take the second half of our time today to talk about how to take it to the next level. So first and foremost, the thing that you cannot skip is update your LinkedIn profile photo. People who have a current high quality photo get more requests, they get more views on their profile. And we even find that people with a photo get an increased number of messages. So if you're someone who's always been on the fence around whether to be public or private with your LinkedIn persona, I always recommend take a quick snap with your iPhone using our beautiful portrait capabilities and make sure it's up to date, it's warm, it's inviting. Now, a lot of people also ask me, should I have a professional outfit on? Should I be wearing a blazer in that photo? It completely depends. What's your industry or area of expertise? If you work in a more formal industry like finance, or you're trying to move into finance after completing your MBA, it might be a great idea to have a nice suit and tie in your photo. But depending on the essence that you want to give off will completely determine the outfit or the colors that you should use. I'm going to pause for one more moment just to call out. Thank you all. The chat is working now on Zoom. So we've enabled the webinar chat. Thank you for typing in questions. And if you have any questions throughout, feel free to throw them in there and we'll pause. Okay, so step 2. To take your LinkedIn profile to the next level from those who have just kind of completed the bare minimum, I encourage you all to use our new pronunciation feature. You can record the pronunciation of your name using a 10-second audio clip. And one of the greatest reasons that I feel this should be used is not just to clarify the pronunciation, but to let people know your voice and your executive presence. In only 10 seconds, people can get a sense for who you are if they've never met. So even someone with a common name like Corey, I can use that feature to showcase my personality. Caroline, with a very common name that could be pronounced Carolyn or Caroline, it could be a great benefit to someone who's never met you to hear your voice pronounce your name, especially your last name. Okay, after you've completed the top items of your profile, it's time to really amplify your voice to tell the world who you are, and that's through a video. So now, instead of just a photo, you can add to LinkedIn what we call a cover story using video instead of just a stagnant photo. And this is a new feature, so it's actually only enabled when you activate our beta feature called Creator Mode. So keep this in mind. Some people think, oh, this is only for advanced LinkedIn users. This is the #1 most talked about aspect of my profile when I get messages. People say, oh, Corey, I love your profile video. It's so creative, because I'm standing in my home office, as you all can tell, and my cat may or may not make a cameo in the background. But secondly, it really allows people to, again, see that executive presence shown rather than told. So if you're shy or nervous to take a video, try it, take a few stabs. My colleague here on the line, Lisa, did a video yesterday, also recorded on mobile while she was walking. And I feel that LinkedIn really appreciates that authentic, real life view into your work life. So don't feel like it has to be too official or that you have to have a tripod and a fancy camera to start dabbling in video.
And Corey, can I add one thing?
Please.
Yeah, so one point. So here, I'm coming at this more from the public relations lens. And so what we have to also keep in mind is that the media, journalists, reporters are going to be landing on your LinkedIn profile. So it's important that they can get a feel for your brand's personality and what you might be like on camera, on video. So taking advantage of the video, the profile image, your cover background. I like to always recommend the cover image, include maybe some logos of past media interviews that you might have had, just for that social proof.
Oh, I love that so much. That's a really good segue into kind of the remainder of the profile field. So Lisa inferred this, but basically, if anyone is not surprised, LinkedIn is now visited most often on mobile device, more often than desktop. So even though we're going to give you some great examples of how to make that top banner image really make your profile stand out, or how to summarize your headline with your references from the media, we also want you to design for a mobile viewing audience. How do you capture their attention with as few words as possible, or in my case, right, a video? But that leads me to my fourth of 5 tips, which is to summarize your headline in a way that is different from your job title. So you'll notice, right, underneath my photo and my name, the first thing people read is not my experience, not my company or my university. It's simply my headline, which is a customizable field. A lot of people don't realize because it defaults to be your job title. If right now Caroline has VP of Enterprise at Ducere, that's what's going to become your headline. However, I love to really recommend that this be an all-encompassing identity that summarizes all your past jobs and your current job, rather than just a title. So for example, mine is a learning champion. I'm also an onboarding lead. Lisa, tell us an example. What's your headline on LinkedIn?
So I combined, I love this example of using the headline. So I just like to say, like, your headline is like a headline of an article or a headline of some sort of a publication. So what is the umbrella that's wrapping you up? So mine is Female Disruptors founder, author, podcast, and you can change it up. So if let's just say you recently were laid off from Facebook or one of the big techs, I've seen some people put in their headline, like, recently laid off from Facebook or something like that, where they're looking for what is their next opportunity. So you can make it a call to action in your headline. So there's so many ways you can get creative in the headline, and making sure that you don't have to like have it be the same always. You can change it up quarterly or seasonally or whatever, maybe promoting an event that you might be attending next.
Amazing reminder. And I just love that summary of, make it, obviously it's called your headline for a reason, make it your headline. So thank you to those of you in the chat who feel like that resonates. Maybe you need to update your headline in this new season of the global economy, whether you're in the job market, maybe you have a side hustle where you're also starting to think about your own business. I might even consider changing my headline to be learning champion and aspiring entrepreneur as I think about starting my own coaching business full time in the next several years. So in the way that you want your headline to sell yourself, the last and kind of 5th power element of your profile is your summary. And this is where you have more space to actually give an elevator pitch on who it is you are. So a few things I would recommend for your summary is to, 1, always use the first person. Many people ask me whether or not it should be in the 3rd person voice, like someone writing a testimonial of you. I encourage you to remember your LinkedIn is your personal and professional profile of record. So you want it to illustrate your own writing skills, your own voice. I think writing in someone else's voice, you miss an opportunity to do that. Secondly, how do you obviously focus on not just your accomplishments, but the skills that are not inherently on your profile already? So your summary should not be a repeat of your past 5 or 6 job experiences. Instead, it should be that common thread that Caroline shared about me at the very beginning, which is that as a connector at heart, my purpose on this earth is to help inspire and enable people to maximize their potential at work. That is a way for me to summarize for you all that I used to love event planning and I used to work at Apple and now I work at LinkedIn, but throughout I was doing the same thing always. It took me a while to figure that out. So think about it like this. What is the common thread between all of your past accomplishments and your next 2 or 3 career goals? I guarantee that common thread is your power, skill set. It's your standout quality that's going to set you apart on LinkedIn from other people who have the same job title or similar experience. Anything to add on that, Lisa or Caroline, or any questions from the audience?
I would love to jump in and, oh, sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So just a personal experience, Corey, before you and I met, this is great because I looked at your LinkedIn profile and I felt your personality through your LinkedIn, the upbeat, happy. And I actually sent that through email to you. I'm like, I love how I can feel like I already met you through your profile, and that your video had a lot to do with it. The summary and everything that you said, it really connected me with you. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for that anecdotal example. Lisa, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And one just tip on the formatting, I always like to recommend formatting with some emojis for bullets or something visual so that it's easy to read and skim and make it skimmable. So using spacing strategically and the formatting of your summary so that it's very easy to read.
Yes, I could not agree more that this example we have on screen, it's not optimal. It's actually only 3 sentences, which makes it easy to digest, but it doesn't really break apart the key concepts or the key words that I should see. So that's a great segue to move on to kind of our second set of tips for you, which is once you realized why you're on LinkedIn and you've articulated it in this summary, yes, of course, you want to also make sure that you've articulated what it is you accomplished in your past roles. But remember, on LinkedIn, it might look like this, like a checklist, but we all know that your journey is never linear. So I recently came across this amazing template from a consultant that I met at work. And it's just a reminder that while our resumes look like straight lines, typically our career stories are a little more of jungle gyms and roller coasters. So keep that in mind when you're spelling out your LinkedIn profile and completing all of those fields. Maybe it's a personal experience like volunteering with your alumni board, or maybe it's a missed opportunity. Like when I was not selected for a recent job internally at LinkedIn, I decided that instead of thinking about that as a rejection or being disappointed that that's not on my LinkedIn profile, I would add it as a career experience that I actually prepared for and learned a lot through the process of. Even though I wasn't picked, I reframed it as a role for which I wasn't selected rather than a role that I was rejected. It was hard though, it took time. So
Love it.
if that resonates, I will share with you all that that was one of my most engaging posts that I ever shared on LinkedIn, is when I posted this exact jungle gym. So if anyone wants the template after this session, I'm always happy to share it. And I'll give credit to the consultancy that designed it. They're called the Institute of Life.
I love that. You could create something like that also for media interviews that you've done in the past. So somebody could see, did this media interview, pitch this publication, and just kind of see a visual of maybe past publicity that you have been featured in.
I love that idea. Let's definitely play around with that template, Lisa. I can't wait to see. Maybe you should make one as a next example.
Yeah, I'm going to.
All right, so now that you've all been thinking a lot about what is my story that I want to articulate on my LinkedIn and what does that story look like visually, we want to move to question 2, which is who? Who are you uniquely trying to reach and connect with on LinkedIn? And do you know the answer? Because a lot of people ask me generic questions like, well, I get a lot of connection requests. Should I always accept them? I'm like, well, it completely depends on your objective. Are you trying to start your own business? If so, I would connect with anyone who could be a client one day. If you're trying to pivot into a new industry because you just completed your master's of business, I would be looking proactively to connect with people who are MBA graduates, right? Or business professionals in the sector you want to work in. This is going to help you multiply your network exponentially if you can answer that question of who. Who do you want to help? So step, let's say 1 out of, again, I have 5 top tips prepared for you, is to activate what we call creator mode. That beta feature that I described that allows you to create a video as your cover story. It also makes your profile default to a follow button instead of a connect button. Now, I want to keep in mind, this is again dependent on what your objective is for joining the session today or why you're on LinkedIn. But if you want to be an influencer or you want to gain more stature and thought leadership, creator mode is a great shortcut to doing that. It'll help your articles and your posts get discovered more, which we're going to talk about in about 10 more minutes, is how to start getting your voice out on the platform and amplifying that voice. So if you don't know where to start on who to connect with and who to request from as you grow your network, I always say to leverage the people closest to you, such as your fellow alumni. So as one of our obviously sponsored this event, Ducere Business School, I went ahead and looked up their LinkedIn page. And this is an amazing way to find people that you don't know yet, but you know at least one connection with whom like you have in common. So just Ducere, I have about just under 500 alumni who have self-selected that they completed education at Ducere on LinkedIn. So it doesn't mean there's only 500 alumni out there. And you can actually go ahead and filter by where they work, common employers, or what cities and countries in which they live, which we noticed about half the alumni on LinkedIn, Caroline, are in Australia. So I'll give you all,
Yeah.
yes, which obviously is a very special place in my heart. So I'll share a very quick anecdote on how you can leverage this tool. Let's say that I was looking to find alumni who went to my undergraduate alma mater. I went ahead and I visited my university's page, and I went ahead and selected where they work and where they live. I, about 6 years ago, decided that I wanted to leave California and take a new adventure, to have an immersion in a different country. So I applied for a job in Sydney. Now, little did I know, not only did I not know a single soul, but we had hundreds of alumni of my school that I went to, USC, University of Southern California, all based in the Sydney area. There were over 300 alumni, self-identified here. So I started filtering through what major or like what function area do they work in, down on the bottom left. And I was able to narrow it down to, I think, 3 different people who I recognized their faces from when I was in university. So I didn't know any of them, but they were basically like 1 degree away, close connections to me. So I messaged 2 of them, Ben and Luika, both of whom I'm still in touch with. And they invited me to an alumni tailgate. It was like a happy hour sports event. And they became my first 2 friends that I met when I moved to Australia about 4 months later. So whether it's through Ducere alumni or your own alma mater, obviously Sydney is a great place to find them, but LinkedIn will help you find them anywhere. Any other
It's
like
a great icebreaker.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So like I went to University of Florida. So if I'm like maybe somebody in the media or somebody that maybe we have shared connections, but we don't know each other, but we could help each other. Like just to point that out is such an amazing icebreaker. It's so much better than just like cold outreach. So if you can find this is, I think, like the best icebreaker, especially if you're trying to pitch the media, if you both went to the same school, or you can find some common denominator like the alumni example. This is a great example. I love it, Corey. You're such a connector.
I try to keep finding connections. So I'm seeing in the chat that a few people want the template for, how to tell their career story. Even doing the exercise of filling out that roller coaster template, that'll help you think of who else you want to connect with. It's not just the people from your old, university, but it's people from your past companies. Even if you didn't really keep in touch well, I've been thinking recently about reaching out to my first 3 managers at Apple because they were so formative in my skill development, but I didn't really keep them on as references. So it's never too late to reach back out. That leads me perfectly to my 4th tip, which is to follow the people and the companies that inspire you. Whether that's people you want to work for one day, an influencer like Sarah Blakely, if anyone hasn't heard of her, she founded the Spanx brand. I don't know Sarah, but I am able to learn through LinkedIn. Is there anyone that I know that knows Sarah? Because maybe I could meet her one day, or maybe I could learn from her through a mentorship, cohort that she starts up, because as an entrepreneur, she loves inspiring other women founders. So I follow her on LinkedIn because we're not connected or personally, like we're not acquainted. I would always recommend follow instead of like request to connect. However, if it's someone that you've met or admired and you do have a connection point, like Lisa said, as a commonality, do not be afraid to request to connect, because that is why people are on this platform. The final tip for connecting is to join groups. So groups are a really underutilized community feature on LinkedIn. And what I've found is it doesn't always lead me to directly like job opportunities, but groups have led me to career development opportunities. So a quick example here is my professional area I work in is sales enablement, right? Because I do new hire onboarding at LinkedIn for salespeople. So we have a Women in Sales Enablement Professional Association. They use a LinkedIn group. And even though I don't live in San Francisco anymore, I previously lived there before Sydney, I decided to just stay connected and I follow their meeting announcements, their invites. I actually had a woman reach out to me recently. She didn't message me directly. She said, I'm looking for keynote speakers for my company's internal conference. And I was wondering if anyone in this group is interested in growing their keynote speaker skills. So obviously my ears perked up, or my eyeballs did, on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, I would love to help. I told her that I don't have a fee for people in my network that I want to volunteer to and give back. And we just had a call recently to talk about that opportunity. So you never know where it will lead, even if it's not a job. It could be a learning opportunity or a collaboration opportunity that leads to future, business results. But it all happened because of a LinkedIn group. And we also have groups very commonly for our universities and alumni audiences. So at the bare minimum, Caroline, to put you on the spot, do we have an alumni group for Ducere graduates that people could join?
I would definitely look into that.
Okay, we'll definitely find the answer, because I don't want to put you on the spot, but I was recently speaking at an event with Lisa, and I put Lisa on the spot and asked if we had a group for alumni of our conference. So you never know what kind of groups are already out there. Yeah.
Yes, and it's on our list for female disruptors, but I'm part of a bunch of groups, not just alumni, but groups that I learn from. So a PR industry group where I'm always learning about just new things, or I can share things that I'm discovered that, for example, this event I shared with that group. So it's awesome to learn from, and then also you can share and use it as a way to get exposure for events, and maybe some articles that you wrote that would be relevant to that group's audience.
That's a really, really good example.
I'm thinking especially from a business standpoint, because we're a business school and people want to a big part of business is, connecting, and who's it that that will be a huge help, especially, because we have a global presence, connecting with people globally. Thank you for that. I'll make sure to be on that homework. Thanks.
Oh, of course, no problem. Happy to help. I just like to point out the power of groups in today's climate as well, I think has really grown, because we all are working from home or in at least a hybrid environment. So people are leaning in and ready for connection. So don't be afraid, again, to send that request or start that group. If you want to build a LinkedIn community that doesn't already exist, you can start it. And you can make it private where people have to request to join, or you can make it public so that anyone who's interested can join. I have a friend who is a previous colleague, and I believe she's on this meeting right now. But her husband actually started a newsletter around product management because he was getting very interested in switching careers and learning more about product. So he started a newsletter that his subscribers have now grown and begun to follow. So you could use LinkedIn groups or the LinkedIn article feature, which allows you to write long form posts to really grow that community and that following, which is the perfect segue to how can LinkedIn help you do this? Not just amplify your voice, but really share those unique gifts and that education that you've gained, whether it's at Ducere or your other university, with the world. This is my number one recommendation for overcoming shyness or fear on LinkedIn, because a lot of people are self-conscious. What if I say something stupid? How am I going to stand out? There's already so much noise on LinkedIn. I say, what unique wisdom do you and only you have? I guarantee that there's something. So if you could think of maybe your top 3 topics that you're most passionate about, like maybe it's a habit or a new interest in femtech. Maybe it's a hobby that I've kind of just taken on the side, which is teaching LinkedIn to students. I love giving tips to high school students who are 16 and up, because that's our age minimum on LinkedIn. Pick that unique category and start to share on LinkedIn just once a month. This is going to show people that you're not just here to connect, you're here to contribute. So tip number 1 is contribute by adding value. How are you going to share something that's either, a giveaway, like an event or a free webinar? How are you going to share your knowledge? Knowledge is free. So if you learned something at work or you got feedback from your boss, put it into a post, reflect and be vulnerable, because people can learn from you. I love to think about democratizing all of the knowledge that I've had the privilege of gaining over the last 12 years since school. I feel so fortunate to have been given tips by mentors. So how do I pay that forward? I can post about it. Another way that you can do that, honestly, to contribute in a way that is mutually beneficial, so it amplifies your brand, but it also helps others, are by doing things like making updates that include photos or videos. This is a really tactical example I'm going to give you all, but I recently traveled to visit my LinkedIn headquarters office. This is in San Francisco. And, you know, I love to take a good selfie. This was in the elevator. But one of the reasons this ended up being powerful is because I don't travel to that office very often. So I decided to post like, hey, loved my visit in SF today. And one of the senior directors of my team, she's my boss's boss, she was in town visiting at the same time that I was. We hadn't coordinated, so I didn't know she was in town, but only because I made this post, she messaged me on our internal chat and she said, hey, Corey, I see you're in San Francisco this week. I am too. Do you want to grab coffee? What a lucky outcome, just because I was promoting my presence there. And that's one way to think about, like, a lot of people I think hesitate from sharing things that seem cheesy or that aren't overtly educational, but there really is power in sharing just connection and community. This was also a way to, I mean, honestly showcase the great work that our company was doing to promote like culture and fun on, I believe it was obviously Halloween or like the fall time. So I wanted to give a shout out to that team that builds the most like creative and cute custom food items for our employee base, basically. And so I posted a picture of the little cookies that they made in San Francisco that day. So think about it as a way to recognize, contribute, and spur connections that wouldn't otherwise take place. So tip number 3 is actually another way you can go beyond just like text and photos if you're not sure exactly you have the best material. And forgive me, the advice got a bit cut off here, but LinkedIn has also come up with other widgets or like little items that you can post with very little work on your end. So a really small example on the bottom left is a kudos post. Like if you want to give a shout out to someone else, oops, I skipped ahead out of excitement. You can go ahead and you can say, my Thursday was so inspiring. Thanks to Caroline for making this event happen. And I can tag Caroline. It will make a little recognition stamp for her. See this graphic? These are built into LinkedIn, so you don't even have to create it, but it's a cool way to also give thanks, shout out others, and promote yourself while also promoting your colleagues. I find managers who do this do it on behalf of like their employees to celebrate great accomplishments. And it creates just such like a feel good karma. And it also makes that manager and what their team is doing more visible to others so that they can learn.
I'll just add to that, Corey. I love these examples. So when I'm working with clients from a public relations strategy and coming up with like news ideas, okay, what's happening within your brand? What's happening within your personal brand or your business brand? The littlest things that they think, oh, that's not important. Nobody's going to care about that. And this is like an example of what you just shared, that you were on site visiting the San Francisco office and you took the selfie and did these like this little shout out, which at the time you were like, you know, did you think it was going to go like be as successful as it was? But these little things that you think might not be valuable are valuable when you share them. And the more unique you make them, you know, people are, just because that maybe your post doesn't get like a ton of likes or a ton of interaction, people are still seeing it and they might not be interacting, but it's still like you're getting that exposure and that visibility and that branding in the LinkedIn feed that is, you know, depending on what you're sharing, what topic, you know, it's helping you get that exposure to the different audience and connections in your feed, whether it's journalists, whether it's potential employers, potential clients. So I just love these examples, and especially the kudos one. I think that that's very underused, I would say.
I think so too, so far. We got a great question in the chat that I want to just kind of take on the fly, because you make a great point, Lisa. Like everything you share goes into the feed and it really adds to your comprehensive brand. So if you're having trouble feeling like you're getting traction on what you're posting, I do have a few tips for that. So the first is when I mentioned activating your creator mode. This will literally increase the viewership in your posts in the feed. So it basically, like, I believe, turns up the placement in our like search engine, you know, optimization when you make a post or you share an article. The second thing you do is when you activate creator mode, you can select up to 5 topics about which you have expertise and you want to get posts on. So select your 5 hashtags, and those you can see actually an example of. I believe when you look at my profile here, you can see the hashtags right underneath my headline. Those are the topics that I like to, you know, speak to and that I love to see content on as well. So,
and these
finally,
are really easy these are very easy optimization tips that are right there in the profile that I would say the majority of LinkedIn users might not even realize that they have access to use these. So I always recommend making sure that you're utilizing all the features that you can that LinkedIn offers, whether it's like the hashtags example, the topics example, the headline example.
Yeah.
That way you'll be getting the most exposure when you're taking the time to publish whatever you're publishing.
All right. I think last but not least, because we want to leave plenty of time today for your questions, is beyond just, sharing those updates and writing posts beyond the text, you can also start to really elevate your subject matter expert voice with those long form articles I mentioned. So let's say you do want to start a newsletter because you want to hold yourself accountable to sharing more consistently. You can, share like deeper words of wisdom or go a little bit deeper into a point of view that you've gained. And I have an example here. If anyone does want to read it, you're always welcome to. But I recently spoke at like a pretty large conference internally at my company. So I shared like my 10 steps I use to prepare because I learned a lot. It helped me work with a speaking coach. And even if, again, it's nothing that I innately like learned, it's not just my own brilliance, it's consolidating and curating what you've gathered from others, what you've learned, what you've observed, and then amplifying that out. It really does demonstrate that you're not just a thought leader. It shows that you're generous with your knowledge and that you could be a teacher or you could be a speaker at a future event. And that's how I've, slowly over the last, it's taken me 9 years. I've gotten opportunities now to speak at a webinar, like I have the amazing privilege to do today, or speak at my company's sales conference. That took me like 9 years to achieve. And it was a goal since I started. So Jared, would love to hear what you want me to share more specifically, but I love the tip to share like what you're accomplishing, share your knowledge. I will share the article, and I have 2 other articles that I find are helpful. One of them is, how I built my brand moving to a brand new country. So if you're someone who's moved to a new city or you're kind of pivoting to a new market, new function, new industry, honestly, using LinkedIn is what helped me like grow my presence and establish my network. So I want us to be respectful of time. So Bill and Caroline, I will pause here to make sure that we have time for like questions from the audience. But what I can leave you with are obviously like the group that I mentioned. I'll share a link to the template that people can use if they want to, make a post. And keep in mind, all we want you to do is establish a regular cadence of going onto LinkedIn. If you are trying to be better at LinkedIn, that's all you got to do is put a reminder each week. Maybe it's Monday morning to log into LinkedIn and just start to join the conversation. Me and Lisa would love that. And we would love you to connect with us because obviously like I live and breathe LinkedIn because I work there, but it's also been a really powerful tool for Lisa and where we connected. Caroline, it's now where you and I connected. So I'm not just representing the company today. I believe it from my past experience.
No, love
I
it.
think one misconception with LinkedIn also is that it's not just Monday through Friday during working hours. So spend, if you have time over the weekend, people are a little bit more relaxed. They might have time to read things. So I always say, don't be afraid to publish or engage on LinkedIn on the weekends when you have some downtime.
I love that.
Thank you for that, because sometimes you get, those notifications, it's like 10:30 at night or Saturday. People do LinkedIn on Saturday. I just want to ask a question, or so it's good to share your knowledge. It's great, but where do you draw the line? Because sometimes you see people's links or posts, and it's a book, and I'm thinking I love to see and hear what you have to say, but I don't have time to read, a long post. So what is your advice on that? Like how long do you just go ahead and write a book, or what's your advice on that?
Great question. Okay, so I have two ideas for that. First is, remember I mentioned at the very beginning that nowadays LinkedIn's audience is so much more mobile first. I want you to think of every post that you write coming up on someone's smartphone, honestly. So your post should never, to me, be much longer than the length of a phone screen. I also have a stat that we didn't get to, that video content gets so much more engagement than like a text post. So if you can try to dabble in video, we now have automated closed captions added on to the video. Do that. And then finally, if you're like someone who, I'm trying to think of an example post, let's say you do have a really long list of knowledge you want to share. Like I shared 10 tips in this article. Go ahead and like start with a headline. And then you could say something like, here are 10 tips for how to prepare for your next executive speaking engagement, people can click see more if they want to. But I agree that like no one has time to read like 4 paragraphs. So you want to maybe, if you look at this example, like keep it bulleted, don't hide the hook, put the headline right at the top of what you're going to cover. And then also if you want to, for example, like go into depth, consider using like a long form article, or you could even use what we call a carousel. This is a brand new tool on LinkedIn that lets you do multiple graphics or videos at once. So you could say like, here are my top 5 tips for leading a webinar from home. But you can now do like tip 1, swipe, tip number 2, swipe, tip number 3. It's a really crafty little way to like build something dynamic. I have to build a video.
I have a couple tips on that too.
Yeah,
so in my trainings, whether it's LinkedIn or some of the other social networks, you always want to keep in mind to front load, and Corey, you kind of like touched on this, but front load the most important information to those first like 24 to, I don't know, 50 characters that show in the post. So somebody has to like, then click more to see the rest of it. So making sure that you're front loading and not, waiting for the bottom line to be at the bottom of the post where it's, kind of buried. You want to front load your information as high up as possible. So that's going to make them want to, see more if they're interested. And also on the carousel example, I love the carousels. One thing that some people don't realize is that when you're uploading a carousel, for it to work like a carousel in a story, you upload it as a PDF versus images. So when you upload it as like, let's say 5 images, it kind of gets cluttered. But when you upload it as a PDF, a document, that's when you can actually see the story like you've seen on, for example, a carousel on Instagram. It will look similar to that on LinkedIn, where it's like all in a line.
Great reminder, Lisa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Caroline, any other thoughts or questions you were going to add?
Yeah, we have a question here. This is a good one, I think. How can LinkedIn be integrated as a PR strategy for personal and business brands?
So LinkedIn, I think, is one of the biggest misses from a PR standpoint. And Corey gave some examples how she wanted to boost her personal brand using LinkedIn. So taking advantage of that, you can be the expert source by publishing articles on your LinkedIn profile, like if you choose article instead of post. So this doesn't have to be new articles. So you can go back and repurpose, let's say, blog posts from your website and publish them if it makes sense for your personal brand on your LinkedIn profile. So that's like a really easy, first step in just leveraging LinkedIn for PR, and also making sure that you're optimizing, looking at LinkedIn as a search engine. And somebody might be searching, so the media might be somebody, journalists, reporters, or potential clients, prospects. If you have a cadence, let's say once a week, of publishing on LinkedIn, you're creating yourself as the expert source. That way, somebody searching for that hashtag, for that keyword, you will come up in the search, and that will give you more organic exposure. So public relations, just to kind of frame it out, public relations is organic editorial for the most part, where advertising is something that's paid. So if you look at all of these examples that we just gave for the past 30 minutes on LinkedIn, these are all things that are organic editorial. It'll give you more free exposure, more free publicity versus doing ads and things like that, once the campaign starts, the exposure is done. Where with public relations and this exposure that we're explaining here and how to use LinkedIn, it's something that you can't take away. It could lead to a story, it could lead to a speaking engagement. So all of these things, you can't take away the organic value. It's priceless.
Thank you.
Couldn't agree more.
Talking about profiles, because you were talking about the importance of it, it's the first thing that pops up. The open to work, you call it a feature, or option. I was speaking with one of our students. She's now getting her MBA. She's almost graduating, and she's looking for other opportunities. She actually wants to make a career shift, but she doesn't want her employer to know that she's, so, and that's one of the questions, like, okay, so it's good to be able to take advantage of that tool or that option, but how can it can hurt you. So how do you advise that people take advantage of, what's the smartest way of taking advantage of that option?
So we have a multitude of levels of visibility that you can showcase on LinkedIn to basically articulate to your network that you're open to looking. So I just took a look to see if I could share it like really quick on the fly, but open to work was previously a confidential field that you could turn on. And this is the lowest level of privacy, or the highest level of privacy. This is if you want to tell only recruitment professionals, I am open to messages. I'm ready for a new job. So if you go to LinkedIn and you go to jobs, which is like the job seeker feature or connection component on your LinkedIn, you can set yourself to be open to work to recruiters only, or you can say open to work publicly. So the second level of open to work is where you showcase it on your LinkedIn profile with the green ring and icon around your photo. That's really designed for those who are ready and open to being like 100% transparent. For example, someone who recently got, laid off from one of the big tech companies or Disney. Maybe there's also a case where you're looking to pivot into a new industry. In another example, I have a client who basically works for county government. They're not allowed to have LinkedIn in government sector. So he's actually sharing that he's open to work publicly so that the corporate world can kind of start to like learn about him, and he's trying to amplify his voice. So it's completely dependent on your circumstances. If your employer is supportive of you doing new things and learning new things, I actually encourage people to be really active on LinkedIn. Don't be afraid that your employer is going to look down on that. You should post about what you're learning and post about the training certificate you just completed. But understandably, like saying you're open to work is sensitive. I would keep it to the confidential setting of, hey, only tell recruiters that I'm looking. You can find it right under jobs.
Thank you. I think we have
Sure.
time for one more. Go ahead, Lisa.
One other, I was just going to add some mistakes that I see people making on using LinkedIn. It's like when they're fine at work and their job is secure, but then the second they decide or they think, okay, I need to go start looking, then they become active on LinkedIn. So it's sporadic, it's not consistent. So don't just be active on LinkedIn when you're looking for a job, because that makes it very obvious. Unless you're kind of like starting, like, let's say, oh, I want to move into another position or another career change within the next year. So then start, but not when it's an emergency, because when it's an emergency, it's never going to work. And that's like in the same with PR. Like PR isn't a start and stop thing. I call it a practice. It's not a campaign. So LinkedIn isn't a campaign for yourself. It's a practice that you're doing something on LinkedIn at least once a week to create that footprint of credibility, authority, and expertise.
Love that.
I love that advice. And as we're speaking, I'm thinking, especially for our students or prospective students, because I'm thinking, from their standpoint, it would be a good idea, I think, based on, you sharing your wisdom, is that it's a good idea for them to maybe journal their journey through the MBA program. It's not.
I love that.
It's right, because it creates excitement. It's authentic, like you said, and it adds the credibility that MBA students are looking for without it, being unauthentic. So I don't know, that just popped in my head, wanted to share. One last question, another question. What are some of the biggest mistakes on LinkedIn that can backfire?
So I have one that I could say, and then before you go, but it is very annoying to me. I get so much, I'm going to call them spammy outreach, that with these generic messages, people that I don't know. And it's something like, hey, we have a lot of connections in common, we should connect. That does not mean anything to me. Like, what is it? What do you see? Why do you want to connect with me? Like, be personalized and specific, because it is so obvious when the generic outreach, you just want to kind of just delete them. So I started deleting them. I started, looking and like seeing who we have in common and taking the extra effort. But if you're going to connect with somebody because you see some value in the connection, be very specific why. Like, don't send these generic outreach. It just makes you look bad. And that's the one thing that if I could say, like, I could change with LinkedIn, it's becoming a little bit worse than it was a year ago with the outreach.
I'll add to that another common, I would say like misstep or with very good intent, like strategy that doesn't work as effectively as I've seen is people reach out quite often to me and maybe they try to think they're being more specific, like to yours, Lisa, and say, hey, Corey, like I see you work at LinkedIn and I'd really love to learn about your career journey. Would you be willing to, have a coffee with me, whatever? And I love chatting with people, telling them my career story like I told you all, but I don't have time to respond to every one of those messages. And my career story, it's already on LinkedIn. That's what LinkedIn describes, is what I've done in my career journey. So I like to think about, Michelle, the way you worded this question is amazing. Like, what happens next is I want people to tell me what specifically we have in common or that they are interested in about that career journey. 2, how can I help them by sharing it? So me just telling you what I've done for my career, that's not going to help you explicitly. But I recently had a student reach out to me, and I like to give this example because it just happened to be one that stood out among the rest and it worked. She said, hey, Corey, I noticed that you graduated from USC Annenberg like myself, and that you now work in tech sales. As a swimmer, I'm trying to navigate my, my career pivot, and I'm really interested in tech sales. Was wondering if you'd be willing to tell me like how you switched into that. So it targeted a specific step in my career journey. She mentioned why it matters to her because she wants to go into it. And then 3, she asked me for like a very specific thing, which made it easier for me to say yes, which is, would you be willing to like have a 30-minute call with me? And I was like, yeah, I can definitely do that. I have 30 minutes. And mind you, this girl, I didn't respond to her right away because I was probably swamped that month, but she messaged me a second time and she said, hey, I'm just following up to see if this would be something you could help with. And I was so grateful. So I tell everyone, do not be afraid to message twice, but make sure that your ask is targeted, specific, and easy to say yes to.
Is video messaging okay? Like if you're messaging someone rather than typing, just sending a video, is that creepy or that's okay?
I love it.
Me too.
Yeah, I think didn't I send you a video message, Corey?
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's a great way to stand out because only people who are really confident and savvy with LinkedIn are doing it lately. But Lisa sent me a video message for our very first connect request.
Definitely, it's a way to stand out. So you're taking that extra step. And also, I think it's also about the give. So we had a question here from Mary that we can both address, Corey, but like wondering why you're not getting exposure on some of the things that you're publishing, whether it's an article. So if you are active on LinkedIn, when you're not publishing and you're looking at who's sharing on your feed. So for example, Corey, I see something that you shared that I think my audience would be interested in. I'm going to do something in addition to liking it. I'm going to repost it, maybe just a straight repost, or I'm going to repost it with some of my reasons why I think my audience might be interested. And so give, so that when you go to publish something, think about it that, you're giving. So all these, connections you've given by reposting and sharing and commenting will increase your chances of getting that done for your post too. And it might take a while to create momentum, but I always say that's even for pitching journalists, outside of LinkedIn, share it, follow them on LinkedIn, share their content, comment on their content. So give, and then when you are ready to publish something, you will receive more statistically.
I agree with that. I think a few other tactical tips that I have found help the visibility of a post, like in the feed, are, I don't know, tell me if they're too basic, but we didn't talk about them explicitly. So the first is when you share anything on LinkedIn, including a post, but especially a long form article, it's best to share it in a post that has tagged individuals. So for example, anytime I'm writing a post, honestly, I tag my collaborators or people that I want to know about it. So I'll say, hey, everyone, I'm super excited. I'm presenting with Ducere this week, co-starring Lisa, tag Lisa Buyer, and Caroline, tagging her. That led me to get immediate comments and engagement from Lisa and Caroline, which then created a momentum where my post obviously showed up in the feed of their network. So when you're sharing an article, I've never seen, Mary, the missing feature you mentioned in your chat, which is that like it doesn't have the share button. But after you publish an article, it is not duplicative to then share it to your network. So it sounds obvious, but I could go to my article that I posted like 2 years ago and I could reshare and write a post that will push it out into my feed. That's what I probably recommend. I'd say, hey, you know, I took a moment to gather my top 10 tips for executive speaking. Here it is for those of you going back to in-person events this spring. So we can't wait to look at your article, Mary. You just read my mind and I was hoping you would go ahead and post it. So yeah, love hearing about great PR example, right? If you have another modality like a podcast, you could post about your podcast episode or write a long form article, but make sure you're writing a post as well to go into your feed that pushes your article out in front of more followers. Because right now, an article on LinkedIn, it will only go to your followers, your direct connections and followers. But if you write a post and Caroline and I comment on it, then all of my network is going to see it too.
Oh, that's
One
great.
example that I've seen where you can't share, and I don't know if this is maybe what happened with Mary, is that if you post something in a group, you can't then share it outside of the group. So that's when the share button isn't showing up. So I don't know if that could be
Correct.
a possibility, but just keep that in mind when you're sharing something in a group, then somebody in that group can't share it outside the group. Right?
Great call.
And you mentioned tagging people, you know, like does it matter if you tag them on the photo or in the comments or both?
Great question. So I'd always recommend both. Tagging people in the photo is a new feature. So what you want to do is tag them in the post primarily. So if you tag them with their name, they will get a notification by default that says like, Lisa, Corey tagged you in a video post this morning. The other way that you could do that, honestly, is by, yes, now you can tag someone in a photo and it actually doesn't send notifications by default. So I would recommend the first one.
Thank you.
Great question. Yeah. What else? What other questions or concerns? I will share, Mary, just to clarify the discussions about groups, you guys, is that groups are really designed for like community, meaningful audiences that have a shared commonality. So you should always share to your network first and foremost. That's going to create the biggest waterfall effect. Then if you also want to amplify to people you don't know, you should reshare your content into a group. So I always share first on to my network because I am trying to approach like a bigger number of followers. Then I might share it to my USC Trojan Women's Society because I know that there's a lot of women in that group that I'm not connected to yet, but that is a secondary attempt to scale it. So yeah, they can't reshare, Mary, if it's in a group, but they can reshare it if I post it publicly first.
Wonderful.
All right, we have only 1 minute left, Caroline. So what else can we leave you with?
I'm just looking at from again, like looking from student perspective, you know, because again, we have students that are starting a program that they already been accepted to the program, right? So they're going to be graduating, let's say in 2024. Is it okay if someone that hasn't completed yet their program, if they put MBA, because they will be graduating in, right? They're going through the program rather than, or do you recommend that they wait until they graduate and then how can they take, you know, because again, I'm thinking common sense would tell me that if you put it there, then the keywords would get picked up, right? But
yeah,
amplify that and how can you use that to your advantage?
I would definitely encourage you to list your credential that you're working toward, no problem. One way, I just pulled up an example profile of one of my best friends in the world who's currently enrolled in MBA. Hers says MBA candidate 2023.
Beautiful.
So you're not misrepresenting at all, but it has those keywords. Or you could say something like pursuing MBA at Ducere. In your headline, you can use that action verb, like Lisa mentioned, to make it like, you know, a story that you're telling rather than just using a noun or a credential.
Beautiful.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I love that you have the QR code.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much, ladies. Really appreciate you sharing your wisdom. This webinar has been recorded, so we will be sharing it. And if you know how to get a hold of me, Corey, and Lisa, connect with us on LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to help.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you
so
for
much.
having us. And
Thank
go ahead
you.
and use that QR code on the screen to connect with me if you can't find my profile. Caroline, can we take a group photo, a virtual group photo? Okay, great. Before we close the webinar. All right, everyone smile and Thank you all for the comments in the chat. All right.
Yay.
Thanks so much.
Give me just 1, 2, and 3.
I have one last social PR secret. Speaking of QR codes, when I go to events now in real life, like I have LinkedIn on my phone, and I use the QR code to just connect with people instead of my business card. So they scan my QR code from my mobile device. We connect right away on LinkedIn, and it's done. So I've been using that
Wow.
like a power networker, power connector in real life events. So use it like Corey's using it, but then also use it from your mobile device and just connect with people in networking events.
Amazing tip.
Love it.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Have a great
Bye.
day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.